Born on April 19, 1882, in São Borja, Rio Grande do Sul, a southern frontier town steeped in gaucho traditions and martial valor, Getúlio Dorneles Vargas grew up amid the lingering shadows of Brazil's imperial past and the volatile stirrings of Republican promise, raised in a family of modest means but deep-rooted political ties. His father, a retired military officer and local political boss, ensured young Getulio was steeped early in the values of order, discipline, and nationalism, educated at home before entering a military academy and then law school in Porto Alegre. Vargas was a studious and determined young man who graduated in 1907 and quickly entered public life as a state deputy in Rio Grande do Sul, quietly ascending the political ladder through a combination of cautious ambition and strategic alliances within the state's dominant Republican Party, earning a reputation as a pragmatic reformer and skilled negotiator. By the 1920s, he became finance minister under President Washington Luis, but it was his leadership of the 1930 Revolution, a populist nationalist uprising sparked by regional discontent, economic crisis, and electoral fraud, that catapulted him to national power, seizing control after the assassination of his ally João Pessoa and overthrowing the old republic's oligarchic system, thus inaugurating a new era in Brazilian politics marked by centralization, modernization, and charismatic rule under his provisional government. Vargas quickly consolidated authority, dissolving Congress, rewriting the Constitution, and asserting federal control over state governments, pursuing a program of economic nationalism and industrialization aimed at reducing Brazil's dependency on foreign capital and coffee exports while cultivating a new alliance between labor, capital, and the state through policies that expanded workers' rights, established labor courts, and promoted social welfare, earning him both adulation as the father of the poor and condemnation as a cunning authoritarian. In 1934, a new constitution was approved under his influence, but as the decade progressed and fascist movements like the Brazilian Integralist Action grew in strength, Vargas increasingly leaned into authoritarianism, culminating in his 1937 self-coup that established the Estado Novo, new state, a corporatist, quasi-fascist regime that suspended elections, banned political parties, imposed strict censorship, and created a pervasive secret police. Yet paradoxically, while suppressing democratic freedoms, Vargas also oversaw the creation of major state enterprises such as Companhia Siderúrgica Nacional and Petrobras, though the latter would come later in his second presidency, laying the foundations for Brazil's modern industrial base and advancing a national identity rooted in state-led development. During World War II, Vargas initially flirted with Axis powers, but eventually aligned with the Allies, sending Brazilian troops to fight in Italy and using wartime leverage to extract economic aid from the United States. Though the contradiction of fighting for democracy abroad while ruling as a dictator at home became increasingly untenable, especially as a new generation of Brazilian officers and middle-class reformers began agitating for democratic renewal, culminating in Vargas being forced to resign by the military in 1945 after 15 years of uninterrupted rule. Retreating to his estate in São Borja, Vargas re-emerged as a democratic icon in the post-war period, reinventing himself as a champion of popular sovereignty and labor justice, and in 1950, against the odds, he was elected president through direct vote, returning to power not as a dictator but as a populist elder statesman amid a country now grappling with Cold War pressures, economic imbalance, and deep social divides. In this second term, Vargas pushed for further industrialization, raised the minimum wage, nationalized key sectors like oil, and intensified his nationalist rhetoric, but his renewed populism alarmed conservative elites, foreign investors, and segments of the military, who accused him of demagoguery and fiscal recklessness. His presidency grew increasingly embattled, especially after the attempted assassination of his political enemy Carlos Lacerda in 1954 was linked to members of Vargas's inner circle, prompting a political crisis that spiraled into calls for his resignation from both Congress and the military. Defiant and unwilling to capitulate to those he saw as betrayers of Brazil's sovereignty and enemies of the people, Vargas instead chose to end his life with a gunshot to the heart on August 24, 1954. Leaving behind a dramatic suicide letter in which he declared that he had given his life to the people and would now leave life to enter history. A phrase that resonated across generations and immortalized his complex legacy as both a father of modern Brazil and a controversial figure whose blend of nationalism, authoritarianism, and populist reform left an indelible mark on the nation's political culture. Revered by many for uplifting the poor and industrializing the country, reviled by others for undermining democracy and institutional stability, Getulio Vargas remains one of Brazil's most towering and enigmatic statesmen. A man who rose from the frontier to dominate an era and whose life story continues to echo in the heart of Brazilian identity.